Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you all had a great time meeting the other attendees at our SpeedNet Connection session. If you're just joining us, I'm Nina. I'm the Enterprise Relationship Manager here at Elevate Network, and I'm happy to welcome you back to our last pair of sessions. Thank you so much to all of you who have joined us throughout the day for these very important conversations. We're so honored. And next up is our Harnessing Women's Economic Power. And you're welcome to clap with me virtually. Please welcome to the stage Arlen Hamilton, founder of Backstage Capital. Daryl Fairweather, chief economist at Redfin. Hadi Mendez, founder and CEO of Boldly Speaking LLC. And Jackie Zener, founder of She Money. Hadi Mendez, our moderator for this session. I'll let you take it away.
All right. Thanks, Nina. Hello, Elevate Network. Happy Pride Month and welcome to our panel. My name is Hadi and my pronouns are she, hers, and ella. And I identify as a Latina and a woman of color. I'm so happy to be here today with this rockstar panel. I am the founder and CEO of Boldly Speaking, a company whose mission is to transform the experience of women and people of color in the workplace. In my previous life, I spent over 15 years in the financial services space in various capacities. I was a certified mortgage banker at one point. I held my Series 7 license at a different point. And here I am today. So thank you for joining us. I'll be your moderator for the next hour. And don't forget to submit questions as you think of them, because we will have time for Q&A at the end. So I want to invite the panel now to introduce yourself. Please start off by just letting us know a little bit about what led you to having the career that you do today and what you love most about the work that you do. So let's start with Arlen.
Hi, thank you. I'm Arlen. I am the founder and managing partner of Backstage Capital. We are an investment firm that invests in underestimated founders who actually helped coin that term in venture. And we have about a decade ago, I was homeless. And since then, we have invested in more than 200 companies led by women, people of color, and LGBTQ plus founders. After noticing and being just appalled by the disparities in funding going to these groups, where in the country at the time, and it's almost the same, but that's a different story, about 90% of venture funding goes to white men in a country where they make up about 30% of the population. And in fact, most of the first investors in Backstage Capital were white men because they thought that was ridiculous too. And it was definitely women who spearheaded all of the inflection points, including my very first investor. And so just doing this work has been amazing and transformative.
Thanks, Arlen. Daryl, why don't you go next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Daryl Fairweather. I am the chief economist at Redfin. I have been the chief economist for over 5 years now. I study the housing market and its relationship to the economy, which has been very interesting over the last several years. It's an understatement. Before working at Redfin, I was a senior economist at Amazon. I have my PhD from the University of Chicago. I went to MIT for undergrad. I got interested in economics because I am fascinated by the decisions that people make, and I want to understand why people decide to make those decisions, whether they're financial or personal. And I love economics because it puts a rigorous framework on those decisions and allows us to analyze them and try to improve the economy by making everybody more informed about the economy. So I'm excited to be here and to talk about economics with all these lovely women.
Amazing. Thanks, Daryl. Jackie, you're next.
Hi, great to be here with you all. I'm joining you from Salt Lake City, Utah. My gosh, I'm a little older than I think all of you, so I have a little bit longer of a tale, but I'll try to keep it brief. But I studied finance. I'm a Canadian. Whoop, whoop, any Canadians that are joining the call today. But I graduated from UBC, and landed on Wall Street and Goldman Sachs in 1988, where my professional career in finance started. So I really just worked at Goldman. I became a partner in 1996, 8 years out of joining the firm, making me, I still think I hold the record of the youngest woman and, of course, the first female trader, because there weren't that many partners back then, to become partner, and was blessed to have a liquidity event 25 years ago, May 4th, actually, when the firm went public, and I was one of the 14 women that were partners of the firm at that time. So I'm a huge champion. I have such a love for the Elevate network. It dates back to my love and adoration of Janet Hansen, the founder of Elevate, and the whole community was so transformational for me at the early stages of my career, and it's such a privilege to be here now. And since then, I co-founded Women Moving Millions, which is the largest global network of women philanthropists in the world, of women funding women, and have used my capital in all the ways that, can we shout out to Melinda Gates for a minute, just articulated in that New York Times whoop whoop article, but have really been using my money philanthropically from an investment perspective. I'm also an investor in about 25 direct companies and about 12 funds, almost all of them focused on women and underestimated founders. And it's just a privilege to be here today and kind of whoop it up a little bit when it comes to, I think, what we're calling the feminization of wealth, and what does it mean for women to step into their to be their economic and financial power. So thank you for including me.
Amazing. What great panelists and backgrounds, and this is going to be an amazing conversation. So I want to provide some context to our audience, just so that we all know, like, by the numbers, what's really going on here. So by the year 2030, which is, within 6 years, women will control 30 trillion with a T in personal wealth. And this means that women in the US will soon control more of the country's wealth than ever before. In addition to that, we know, and thank you for bringing up Melinda, because I was going to bring her up too, statistics show that women tend to reinvest in their families and communities more than men do. So as an example, you mentioned Melinda Gates. She recently announced a $1 billion commitment with a B. And the money, which is going to be distributed globally, is earmarked for women, families, and reproductive rights. And she's not the only one. Y'all probably all have heard of Mackenzie Scott, the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos, and she's given away billions of dollars also with a B to nonprofit organizations, to thousands of them. So my first question that I'd love for us to tackle is, how has, to date, and how will, moving forward, women's wealth and power continue to shape our economic and societal landscape? Because like, with money comes power. So what's going to happen? What's the future looking like? Daryl, would you like to get us started?
The biggest challenges right now for women economically revolve around affordability, like affordability of childcare, affordability of housing. That's one that I definitely focus on. So as this wealth transfers, I think that there's going to be more spending that comes with that as well. And I think that our government and world governments are going to have to analyze, like, do we have the infrastructure in place to accommodate the spending that's going to be happening by women? If more women are working and need more childcare, do we have the childcare workers to fill that need? And what needs to be done at a policy level to address that could potentially uplift women in the United States and also women around the world if we had a more liberal immigration policy that was more directed towards things like that. So just the thing that I think about when I think about wealth transferring to more women is that women spend money on different things, and we might not have the economy set up to meet that demand that's going to come for women for the things that they care most about and that they spend the most on.
Absolutely. That's a really great point. Thanks for sharing that. What would you add to that, Jackie?
Well, thank you for that. And I've been prepping a lot. We're having our own She Money Summit starting tomorrow. And one of the speakers that we have coming in is this amazing woman named Heather McCullough, who is an entrepreneur in residence at the Aspen Institute and wrote this amazing report set calling "What If the Economy Worked for Women?" Highly encourage everyone to look it up. And it speaks to the fact that women kind of want the same things, right? Across demographics, even across age level and income level. And you nailed it, Daryl, in saying that housing affordability and generally speaking, the cost of inflation and the fact that wages are not keeping pace with the cost of living, for generally speaking, is just a huge issue. I think more and more people are falling behind, whether they regardless of gender. But obviously, we know that it falls disproportionately on the shoulders of women and single mother, head of households, and people of color in this country. I think the question is, two, like when we see this trend, which we are calling feminization of wealth, which is happening for 5 reasons. One of them is inheritance, but two, more women are working, staying in the workforce. They're more educated. They're getting better jobs. They're getting more engaged financially. And frankly, I don't think we've even begun to see the impact of it. And it's really a question is if the economy, when shaped with a greater percentage of women with more money making those financial decisions, will mean anything different. And as a research junkie, I think you said as well, Daryl, and I've studied that women tend to align their spending more with their values. Of course, we might purchase more products or services that are designed for us. And I'm sure Arlen will speak to that in terms of the emergence of a lot of companies and industries, in certain sectors, especially in healthcare. As a postmenopausal woman, I'm like, what the heck? And why did that take so long to get products that serve me? But it'll only happen if we make it happen. And there is such a story in here of the me that's part of the we that says if we want a different world, whether it comes from policy and practice perspective, products, services, you name it, we have to take a serious look at how we're using our money, how we're spending it, giving it, and investing it, along with a set of values that say women matter.
Amen. Thank you. Arlen, why don't you come into the conversation and tell us a little bit about where women are showing up from a I guess, innovation perspective?
Yeah, and I also want to shout out the chat because there's a lot of great conversation happening there and recommendations. And I agree with it being from a policy standpoint. I think we were going to touch on that later, but it being on a more people getting into politics. A few weeks ago at South by Southwest, I was on stage, and for the first time in years, I just cried. I don't know where it came from, but I think it was seeing like a younger crowd looking at me for answers to are things going to get better? And it was a mostly Black crowd, and there was a lot of earnestness in it. And I said in that moment, and I thought it in that moment. I hadn't thought too much about it before then, but I thought so many of you need to get into politics because we can certainly listen to as many podcasts as I do on a weekly basis and get really, really scared and watch a lot of MSNBC and be worried.
Yeah.
And or we can also become part of the solution.
Yeah.
And I still believe that that's possible. I also wanted to say that we talk about Melinda Gates and we talk about Mackenzie Scott, which shout out to Mackenzie for changing her last name. Still probably her dad, but whatever. It's how it works. We talk about that, but we do not need to wait to become billionaires to do things of note. We don't need to wait to become millionaires to do things of note. There is so much power. Imagine every single woman that we know watching this and every woman that woman knows were to do one small act, one small impactful thing for another woman or another person. That would dwarf any one person's donations. And so I think that sometimes we feel resigned. We feel very inspired by and excited by big announcements like this. And I even did a YouTube video about it because I was so excited about it. But at the same time, we say, oh, well, must be nice. They can do it. Well, we can too. And I learned that from being on both sides, knowing what poverty looks like and knowing what the other side of millions looks like. And I can tell you that looking back, I know that there was impact before any money. So I think that's really important. And of course, in my seat, I have one of the best seats in the world, in the house, to innovation. So I do see so much. I think people, I want to shout out Monique Woodard at Cake Ventures because she has just an awesome thesis that she invests in. She invests in healthcare and and women's things that will help women and things that will help the elderly, because we're all going to get there hopefully. And I just think that like those creative niche way of doing things, it's always excited me more than the fat cats. It's always excited me more to see, can we have, I call it in my new book, Your First Million, I call it mini, MANY, mini, MINI, empires. Can we each, collectively be as powerful or more as the billionaires of the world?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your message so much about impact. And I think that really, we're trying to mobilize women by way of this conference. And I think that's an amazing call to action. So thank you. You did, I think one or maybe more of you talked about women in elected positions. So I do want to transition a little bit into a topic that is probably top of mind for all of us, and that's the 2024 US election. And I want to explore how women are expected to impact the outcome this year. So my first question, and I do have a follow-up, but I'll just start with the first question. What impact does the economic standing of women from various socioeconomic as well as different racial and ethnic backgrounds have on the role that they will have in shaping the polls for the 2024 election? So whoever would like to start us off, trying to just understand the role that women are going to have in shaping the polls.
I can jump in with some stats. So the economy is doing well in terms of low unemployment and wage growth for people at the bottom of the income spectrum. So I think that the economy that also translates to higher cost of living. Now, there's been a lot of attention on, for example, how the cost of fast food has gone up, but a lot of that is connected to higher minimum wages and higher earnings for those kinds of workers. So I think for some people, they may feel like their economic situation has improved quite considerably over the last 4 years with unemployment going down, people having more job opportunities. But some people are going to feel like everything is so much more expensive. Their income hasn't gone up, even though maybe other people's incomes have gone up. At the same time, housing has become much more expensive. The typical monthly mortgage payment is 70% higher now than it was in 2019. More than half of households spend more than 30% of their income on rent, making them cost burdened when it comes to housing. So although the economy is doing well on some of the traditional measures, I think there are a lot of people who feel like the economy isn't working for them. And it's going to be mostly the middle class and high cost cities that are feeling it the most. The swing states, they have a bit of a different economic outlook. So maybe that will be beneficial for Biden electorally, but I think there are a lot of people in expensive places like Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Boston, who just feel like the economy is not working for them, but their vote isn't, as weighed as heavily in the electoral college.
Does that mean they won't show up, or does that mean that they just might not vote the way they traditionally have, or what could it mean if things aren't working out for them economically?
Probably a combination of both.
Yeah.
Some people might decide to vote differently or not vote at all just because they're disenchanted with the economy right now.
Yeah. I don't know how political we can get, but it is a question that's been asked. I'm going to be very careful how I say this. I wonder why women vote for Trump or would vote for Trump. And that would be a big part of it, is if they're so disillusioned, even though Biden has done notably more for the economy than most presidents before him, in some cases has broken records. If it's being perceived that way, there's I think it's self-loathing to vote for Trump if you're a woman. But at the same time, that may be it. And these are conversations that we should have, and we should be able to talk about this publicly, and then with our friends and people who are saying, I need to vote elsewhere. I can't vote for Biden. I'm either going to sit it out or vote for Trump. Also note that I think I just saw something where I think they said that 90% of the Black woman vote was for Biden last
Yep.
election, and we're peeling off. And a lot of it will be just inaction, but that's going to affect things. And so, if Black women are making 63 cents to the dollar of white men, which I think that's actually high, but that's the last I saw, um, those things kind of they trickle down, and they're a cause and effect situation. So there's the hope that some Black women or other women of color are enamored enough with Kamala that that's enough, and that they also just kind of know that, for lack of a better term, better of two evils. But I don't think of it that way. But maybe that's how they think of it. Um, but yeah, when you're already underwater because of systemic issues, and then the economy itself doesn't seem to be doing well, even though it is in a lot of ways, it's just kind of disillusioning, and it's going to have people just sitting by and tell me how it turned out. I'll face whatever the results are.
Yeah. That's a little scary proposition. Jackie.
It is. We
Yeah.
still have time, though. We still have time to have those conversations and possibly reframe it, to move it away, actually. Even though the economy conversation is vitally important, we might want to move it away from that to more of your bodily rights and your human rights that are at threat.
And voting rights. Yeah, all the rights. Exactly.
Everything.
Jackie, have we missed anything? Did you want to add anything before I move on to the next question?
Yeah. How long do you have? Yeah. I mean, how Daryl and Arlen framed it is like people tend to vote their pocketbook, like whatever is showing up for them most in their lives. And there is a narrative that the economy is not doing well. And I saw this recent report that my wealth advisor sent me, and I was like, so many people believe that. But the problem is, like, we are such in an echo chamber of what we these narratives that we believe, and the reality is the economy is doing very well. We came out of a pandemic. I mean, like, that just feels like a million years ago, but the fact that we survived that to the degree that we did from an economic perspective, acknowledging just deep personal losses. I'm not saying, of course, everyone did well, but the economy, the state of the economy cannot be blamed or saved, by one president necessarily, but a lot can be destroyed by the wrong person in office.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing that now. As women, we have to ask ourselves, what do we stand for? Of course, we all want economies. We want ourselves to be safe, to have access to quality health care, and to make decisions for ourselves and our own bodies. And, to have someone, I think, in office, regardless, that you could hopefully respect, and I wonder where that has gone, and the state of politics in the US, and the divisiveness and the vitriol that's happening, and sort of the spinning narratives. It's just so disappointing. And it calls on us to do our own work and look deeply into our values and say, not just how do I take care of myself, but what are the needs of other people within our community? And it's not just about federal, it's very much about local. Yep. If anything, I think we've learned in the past few years that government at all levels really, really matters.
Yes.
And behind that also is money.
Yes. Yes, 1,000%. Well, this kind of leads me to my next question, which is a little bit beyond the 2024 election, but with women expected to have more financial influence than ever, how do you think that's going to impact future U.S. elections, especially in terms of having more women in office? I think some people were talking, I forget who was talking about it earlier, but someone was saying there's like one black female senator. There's never been a black female governor. I forget exactly what was said, but it was all quite startling. What do you think we can expect moving forward? Especially, I'm curious to know if you think we'll see more influential women backing female candidates.
Yeah, I would hope so. It's a lot of this is like predicting the future, but we can hope for the future, and we can try to aim for the future we want. And yes, I think a lot of it is, again, cause and effect. So I think as Mayor Bass is the Black mayor Black woman mayor of LA. And I actually just learned that post voting. I learned that she was the first Black mayor, or the second Black mayor of Los Angeles, and the first Black woman mayor.
Yeah.
And that kind of, those like wins are very interesting, and they kind of inspire. So I could definitely see that. A lot of times too, I'll kind of throw this out there just kind of more broadly. And I see you, Siobhan, I hear what you're saying. I've talked to in the past decade, thousands of women who make more than 200K a year. Essentially, that's the cutoff for being accredited. So I've talked to thousands of them, and I would say more than 70% of them, maybe even a lot more than that, don't know a few things. Like, they don't know that they are quote unquote accredited investors. Mm-hmm. And I know this organization talks to people about that all the time, but they don't know that they have that power to vote with their investment as far as what they want to see created in the world. So those are the conversations I have all the time. And again, this is not everyone, but this is more than 50% of people who have the ability to back these candidates in a very impactful way, don't know that they can. They don't know a lot of things, and when they find out certain things, they spring into action. They mobilize really, really quickly because they feel empowered. And even if they're mobilizing against something that I don't personally agree with, you know what I mean? Like, it's not the exact, we don't agree on everything. They're making their voice heard, and that's really exciting. So we would hope that this means that there will be more and more and more. And I think, it's just, where are we getting the information from these days?
Yeah.
To add to that, I'll say that, women are graduating from college at higher rates than men now. They're going to graduate school at higher rates. So it would be surprising if we didn't see more women in leadership roles over the next couple of decades. It would mean there is really some barrier keeping women out, which the barriers are there. I think they do exist. But just the fact that, more and more women are getting higher and higher education, I think it bodes well for our leadership prospects.
Yes. Anything else anyone want to add before I move on? I'm going to actually move on to a different topic. Anything else on the elections, future elections, 2024 elections?
Vote for Biden.
Yeah. +1. All right. I'm going to switch gears now, and I'm going to take us to entrepreneurship. And this topic is actually one that's near and dear to my heart as a business owner. Entrepreneurship, it ain't easy. For anybody who makes it look easy, it is hard, y'all. It is very, very difficult, especially if you are like the first or the only in your family that's coming up with a unique and innovative idea and going out on your own. It is challenging. And yet it's quite popular. There's so many people want to be business owners. People want to convert their side hustles into full-time businesses. So it's a very relevant topic. So with that as our backdrop, what we know is that the number of women-owned businesses has increased significantly, and it's nearly at right now double the rate of males starting businesses, which is pretty amazing. In addition to that, Black women and Latina entrepreneurs have emerged particularly strong post-COVID. So how do we build upon this momentum that we're seeing? How do we improve it? How do we scale it? How do we make this like a thing? I don't know who would like to start this conversation, but I think it's a really fun and interesting one.
Well, I'm happy to jump in because I'm kind of a new business owner myself with the company She Money. And I never bring this up, but I've actually run a business in Canada, a small business, an orchard business. So I'm also in the egg space with my little roadside stand. But we do sell a lot of fruit. And oh my gosh, don't get me started about that whole industry, especially in Canada. But I'll locate it in the context of my local community, which is Utah, where we have done so much over the past couple of years, we meaning She Money, to really lean in and understand the needs of small business owners, why they're starting and what are their opportunities and barriers. And it connects a little bit into the earlier discussion. Why are people starting small businesses? Why are women, again, generally speaking, starting them? Well, at one, maybe because their 9-to-5 jobs are just restrictive. They don't offer good benefits. They're not getting paid what they're worth. They don't have flexibility. So that's a big thing still, and ties into the prior conversation about if the economy worked better for women, maybe we'd have less people splitting off to start their own businesses. And not that that's a bad thing, but there's always unintended consequences and questions about the motivation for why people are doing it. And the second one, so more control over their schedule, be their own boss, hopefully have more financial upside, all of those great things.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are doing it because they need a second income. They're just not making enough money. So I think it is an exciting trend, but it's also not all good, because we also know that a lot of these business tends to be single proprietorship businesses. So there's a lot of opportunities and challenges with that. And, what becomes the goal and the motivation? And do you have the resources, often capital, right? We're talking a lot about money, that the access to capital to make those businesses, grow and thrive. So my quick just insight locally is how important it is to live in and be part of a community, and talk about women supporting women. And again, we're making these big generalizations, but just really leaning in and knowing that every dollar you spend going to that store versus a Walmart, buying a product or service from an independent entrepreneur is, as we like to say, one woman's spending is another woman's income. So I think there is a lot to unpack in this trend, but back to what Arlen said too, these micro decisions that we make every single day where we buy a product or service add up to mean whether someone, and often it is a woman trying to provide for herself and her family, has enough income to do just that.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of what is it, people may be familiar with Pinky Cole, who has Slutty Vegan. It's $100 million plus company, vegan burgers and other. And she's a really interesting person. And she, a few weeks ago, she put out an Instagram and said, we're going to put all of our attention on this one company right now. And it was a company called Mess in a Bottle, which is a t-shirt company that I've worked with in the past, who I've also encouraged not to take on venture funding, by the way, because I wanted her, I thought she should keep as much of her company as possible ownership. And when Pinky did that, she has a great following. Over 3-4 days, almost $100,000 worth of sales came in. And a couple of weeks after that, someone reached out to me who is a kid's book author, in addition to being other types of entrepreneur. And she said, I have to be honest, I can't pay my rent. And I get these, let me be clear, I get these every day, just because of my story. But this one, she had so much, she had grants in the works, she had so much in the works. She had done so much. I said, let me see what I can do. Put it online, and within 24 hours, she had $5,000 of back rent collected and more, And it is about, again, another way of voting with your dollar. Are there ways right this moment? That's what's exciting. This moment we can start to make decisions, and it's not the easiest thing in the world because it's kind of natural. It's like when I try to split when I send people to my books between half Amazon and half indie bookstores and Black-owned bookstores and et cetera, et cetera. So it does take a little bit of effort, and it's like recycling. Like you have to kind of walk over to the other thing and have to think it through. But it's exciting, and we can't yell at men and other people and say you're not doing enough if we're not doing quote unquote enough for it. And so there's so much there. I also think I try to encourage people to really reframe what success in a business is. So many of us will look at articles and headlines and we'll say, oh, I'm supposed to go out and raise $10 million or I'm not successful, or I'm supposed to look like this. This is what a successful company is. When I have discussions with founders, which I have in the hundreds each quarter, one-on-ones, when we really break down what is success to you without any outside influence, it usually comes in at around, hey, if I can make 250K, if I can make, enough to pay my bills, pay my rent, go on a few trips, take care of my mom, I'm happy. And when you do that, when you reframe it, it almost turns into this thing of like, actually, you're already successful. Did you realize you're already successful?
Yeah.
And the more we can have of that, the better. Yeah. And there was something else I was going to say. I can't remember what it was, but those two things, I'll remember it. Hey, my mom told me this would happen. She warned me for years.
If you remember later, you could say later. How about you, Daryl? Did you want to add anything?
I know a lot of people, they start their first business when they buy a property, when they buy like a rental property or an investment property. And that can be, one way to shield yourself from rising housing costs is to invest in housing. So you're actually benefiting off of the way that housing costs keep going up and up. And it's an unfortunate part of our economy that when housing costs go up, people who own property benefit and people who rent don't. But for self-protection, if you own more properties, then you're one of the people that's benefiting.
I did remember what I was going to say.
Okay.
Lamar Tyler in Atlanta talks about this. He puts on a 1,000-person event for Black entrepreneurs twice a year, and spoke at my event, Your First Million Live, in April. He talks about the fact that I think it's something like 90% of Black-owned companies, even though we're building companies left and right, do not have any employees beyond the founder. And if the majority of us would employ one person, it would change everything.
Yeah.
And so that's something to think about too. I found that to be so interesting and compelling, because it's one of those, again, it's one of those, did you call them micro, Jackie? A micro? Oh, I think you're on mute there, but I think that it's a yes.
So yeah, like sole entrepreneur businesses. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like you were saying, like a micro. You were quoting me, but you were reframing.
I think you said many. Yeah, I think I had.
Yeah, exactly. So just this idea of like, again, we don't have to IPO to be successful today. What if you're the first in your group to get to a point where you can employ one other person?
Yeah. Yes.
But only different groups.
I just want to add on that, Arlen, because you said so smartly. I mean, there's so much time, energy given, and I'm not saying it's not important, to this idea of getting VC, like get money and then build and scale and grow. And you look at the mortality statistics of businesses that get venture capital, and it's not to say it's not a good path for the right business, but there is just, as you said, you encourage someone to turn down money. And I've seen it. Like, I have this portfolio of companies, Arlen, I know you have invested in so many. And there's so much that's the only type of money, and that's what they're told. People are told they should go after, so they go after it. And it's absolutely the wrong kind of money for so many businesses. And I know here in Utah, we're really, as both a philanthropic community, but also as an investment community, I challenge people, especially in a local context, to really get creative and say, what kind of capital is needed in our communities to support these types of businesses? And I think we're creative about so many things, because, and we can be more creative about this, because we're not talking about, maybe we are sort of micro loans, but just be creative, because when everyone in communities thrive, everyone thrives. Like that's a given thing. Yeah. And we're just not using our financial creativity in ways that we should be, to really help people in a local context, create circumstances so which that they provide for themselves and their families, and everyone wins when that happens.
Amen. I want to ask Arlen, I want to ask this next question to you and invite everyone also to contribute. But even though we're seeing, to the point of my earlier point, that we're seeing female-owned businesses really rise and double what the male population is doing, we're and women of color are like really coming out strong. It's still easier for white entrepreneurs to access resource and funding. And the recent court decision just this week affecting the Fearless Fund, blocking grants to Black women business owners, it's really adding to that frustration because so we're getting so little to begin with, and now it's like we're not going to get anything. So it's like this is actually related to the discussion we had earlier in the day around DEI and the challenges in that space. Who should be at the forefront of changing these dynamics and leveling the playing field? Like, who has done it and who needs to be involved?
Well, when the Fearless Fund, first of all, I've been working with the Fearless Fund for years. I was one of their first investors, and personally, and have been, speaking at their town halls. And 2 nights ago, when I learned about this, I put out a video that now has more than 200,000 views on Instagram and across LinkedIn, where I said, okay, they're being blocked from giving grants to Black women. I'm going to give grants to Black women all year long, like it's, my birthday. And you should too. That's what the video said. That was the big call to action, was you should too, and I know that there's a lot more nuance to it, and I don't want to get too much into the compliant, the things of each state. But the point of it is, again, going back to, we can be the change that we need to see. Like, we just can't put it off on someone else. We can do small things that add up. I think Backstage Capital, my venture fund, has done an amazing job, and I can say that because it's not just me. It's dozens of people who have contributed to it, and thousands who have benefited. You can go to backstageinvest.com, by the way, to learn more about Backstage Capital. And I think, in our work that we do, I think there are so many funds. I've invested in about 30 funds because I believe in what they're doing, and I would invest in another 100 if I could, because there's so many in the last decade that have popped up. And I also love these, accelerators and different groups who are. Here's one thing, because I could talk about this forever. But here's one thing.
Brower just wrapped up the voyage of a lifetime, completing one of the most extreme and difficult sports.
Okay. Is that my Mr. like the Sandman pulling me off of the Apollo? The one thing that we can all do that I think is really exciting is I've been talking about these these 6-person salons. So right now you can, if you don't already, do a monthly or a quarterly dinner with 5 other people and invite them in and have a topic and hear from everybody and see what's going on in their lives and see how you can work together. That's something that you can do now, no matter what your socioeconomic standing is. And so your question was like, who do we turn to? Who has been doing a great job, and who do we turn to for that? We turn to ourselves. That's my answer. And as someone who has done this work to the degree that I have done it, even having seen it from that purview, I still think it comes back to the individual.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about this topic, because it is, what is wrong with the world? Seriously, when Fearless Fund, Hello Alice, one of my portfolio companies, was sued for also giving grants. And there's an entity, Harlan, you might know, that's doing this. Like, look at the people that are launching all of these lawsuits, which is a kind of a super PAC-y, kind of group, and say, what is wrong? Like, seriously, what is wrong with the world that they're coming after grants to, generally speaking, small Black-owned women businesses trying to start micro businesses in local communities? Yep. And that is something we should all be super upset about, because there are millions and millions of dollars. Hello Alice, I think they had to spend millions of dollars fighting the case because they did not want to lose because of the precedent. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to join this morning for what is a very important conversation, because I live in Utah. We also passed legislation, not we, I shouldn't say we, they, to make D&I, offices, diversity and inclusion, sort of illegal in public institutions. So overnight, universities, anything that said women or, that were serving certain populations had to suddenly be open to everyone. And it's so missing the story here, because we are not the land of equal opportunity. And anyone who still believes that has to look at the facts and ask themselves, what is the evidence that that is true? Absolutely. And it is up to all of us to to see what is true and actively, as Arlen said, try to level the playing field. I don't even like that term, but just create opportunity and recognize that there's intergenerational trauma. There's, which includes economic and financial trauma. It's a topic I'm so passionate about, and we have to step up, step forward, and stop and pay attention to these frivolous and ridiculous lawsuits, and to say, to challenge the scarcity mentality that is dominating the narrative politically and otherwise, and do what we can in such a local way, especially because that's where it feels like we can maybe have the most impact, to just stand up against this, because it's so disheartening. And my love and support go out to the Fearless Fund and any of the many organizations that are fighting these lawsuits.
And can I point out really quickly, Jackie, as you mentioned, this is for grants. So Fearless Fund is a $40 to $50 million venture fund. They did not sue them. They sued the nonprofit arm or entity that gives out $25,000 grants to women of color from various backgrounds. I've been around about 60 of them. Incredible women. And not only are they incredible, but that injection of capital in some cases turned everything around and turned them into multi-million-dollar companies on their own, with their own power and juice, because of that inflection. And that's exactly what anytime we build something, it is burned to the ground. Like literally or figuratively, it is burned to the ground every few decades. And we rebuild stronger, but I don't know how long we are expected to withstand this insult.
Yeah.
I don't know how long we're supposed to be able to handle this much trauma back to back.
Yeah, I'm going to transition us into the Q&A. A couple of Q&A questions have come in. This first one is around how can young women from underrepresented and underestimated groups who are hungry and longing to join these conversations actively engage? Where can they start?
Okay. I'm never one to just be quiet. There's just so many places. I mean, that's the modern, I love that, obviously we have Elevate. There's so many communities where you can engage in now, and there's so many resources everywhere. And I feel like proximity really matters, and not to be the big, why of what I'm doing here in Utah. But, I've been around the block for a lot of years, and I've worked at such a meta level or macro level with Women Moving Millions and other organizations. And I have really leaned in hard, including, and thank you for sharing it, Elevate Network, the summit we're doing locally, that it's all about money. We are gathering people. We're talking about money. We're making it very accessible. We've offered, multiple scholarships and student discounts, because so much when it comes to money and community is really about wealthy people paying a lot because they're incredibly expensive to host events. And I think it takes philanthropy and businesses in a local area say, you know what matters most for upward mobility, according to Raj Chetty and many others? Social capital, the opportunity to build friendships and networks and community across socioeconomic class. And we have seen it come to life in She Money in a way that it lights me up, in a way that so much of my work over decades has not. And you need to have places and spaces where people are committed to showing up, to asking certainly for what they need, but to just becoming friends. And I think more and more we live in a world where across socioeconomic class, we don't mix it up. And rich people kind of lock themselves up in gated communities. And it's not just about and they don't have everything to offer. I have so much to gain with my relationships with younger and more emerging leaders and people. So my message to sort of the younger woman that's asking that question, or the person, is just to say, look local and try to identify networks and communities and get out there and meet people and mix it up and build friendships. I know it might be easier said than done. Not all cities have that, but we have it here in Utah, and Elevate Network has their chapter that are so incredible. So meet people, mix it up, and and build your own social capital.
Yeah, and I think if you don't have a seat at the table, you can build your own table. I think that comes from Shirley Chisholm, but I think it's an important one too. We need to create some of our own spaces if we don't have access to others. So what were y'all, the rest of you, going to add?
I have a quick hack for that too, and I 100% agree, because I had a 2,000 person event at Your First Million Live, and people are still writing about it a month and a half later, saying it was 2 months later, saying it was transformative for them being in the room, regardless of who was on stage. A hack for younger and anyone else, any age, is to really embrace this creator economy that we're in. I've been doing this for 2 decades now, and what I was able to bring, I talk about this in my book, It's About Damn Time. What I was able to bring was this community, this ability to create community. And the way I was able to do it, I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't know what it was called, but I was creating content for 2 decades almost. And you can do that like for free. You can create a YouTube channel. You can create a podcast. You can then start inviting people. Now, for every 10 people you invite, you might only get 1 yes, but that is enough. And you can start having, have a themed podcast, have a themed YouTube page, have a themed Instagram page. Only choose one of those so you can focus. And then you create content on a consistent basis, let's say once a week, twice a month, something like that. You would then invite people on the topic that you are wanting to get into, so that you get kind of a mentorship in front of you that you can then share with other people. Once you create value for other people, they will start reaching out to you, and you will be invited to be on their stages. So you create your stage to then be invited on other people's stages. And I do mean that figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
And that's where things start to really happen. You have to have consistency and patience and a kind of follow through aim. But this can create, in a 2-year period, more network for you than what has previously been available to us in 2 decades.
It reminds me of that shampoo commercial that like multiplied.
And she told her friend, and she told her friend.
Yeah, exactly. And so on and so on and so on. And it was like multiplied by a zillion. Yeah, that one. Daryl, what would you add to this? I do have one more audience question, and then I want to kind of close this out. So Daryl, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just to add to what Arlen and Jackie said, if you are passionate about something, don't wait for permission. Just start and do it in public, as Arlen was saying, even if it's not perfect. Like, you can open up people to your journey. People will see that you are obtaining these skills and this knowledge, and no one's going to find you unless you put yourself out there. So yeah, do it in public and don't wait. Great call to action, y'all. I have a question here. We're not going to have a lot of time for it, but I'd be curious to hear what y'all have to say. This is from Jennifer Witter, and she's saying we need to look at what happens if Trump wins. What can we do? How can we negate the wave of negative change that is bound to happen? Plan Bs are key. Hope is good, but it won't protect our rights. Anybody have anything they want to offer to Jennifer and the rest of us if this should happen?
And I think in that context, it was almost a rhetorical thing of like, this is how we can frame it too when we're talking about it. Because as many people pointed out, Trump voters, and there may be some here, by the way, Trump voters are not all the same. They're not all the same ones we see on the Daily Show that kind of embarrass themselves. There are a lot of people, including our friends and family, who vote for Trump. I have family who voted for Trump, and I still, again, don't understand it, but I'm trying to understand it. And painting that picture of maybe, yes, you might have this positive come from it, and it may alleviate this pain that you're seeing in Biden, but 80% of these other things that will happen to you and the people you care about are real.
That's right.
Clear and dangerous.
Yes.
That framing is because people ultimately care. Not everyone, but most people care. And so that framing starts to be really helpful.
Thank you.
One thing I'll just add to that is that, lately there's been a bigger and bigger divergence in the kinds of laws that apply to people based on what state they're in. I mean, we've seen that with Roe v. Wade and things like cannabis legalization, that it really doesn't matter where you live. So if you're concerned about Trump and you live in a state like California, I would advocate for, making California a place that more and more people can live in, because it's becoming so unaffordable to live in these states that have more liberal policies. And choosing where, not everybody has the ability to just pick up and move to some place that meets their needs or rights. So it is like an economic issue as well, like who actually is impacted by the election. It depends on what state you live in and what laws get passed.
Yep. Jackie, anything to add before we close out? All right. I think what I'm walking away from this session with is I'm kind of filled with some possibilities, and then I also know that I think there's a fair amount of uncertainty up ahead as well, and I think it really depends where you sit and how you might experience what's coming. But I do have a final question for all of you, and I want to ask you, what gives you hope, and what words of encouragement do you have for the audience?
Happy to kick that off. What gives me hope is I'm not just placating here. So these questions in the chat have been some of the most thoughtful and I don't know, elevated, again, that's a word that we've used. They're really, really powerful and strong questions. And I think they're the right questions, and they haven't all been the same. Like that, to me, that sort of agitation of, we have different opinions and we live different experiences, and we're all women, women and women identifying. That's hopeful to me, because we do contain multitudes. We that is the whole point of this. And so just thinking like, oh, like this is, I say, we got to find joy. We have to find joy wherever we possibly can. And then our work at Backstage. I'm more than a decade into it. We're officially reaching 9 years of being in business in September, and I have not been this vitalized by it in probably 6 years. I'm so optimistic about what's going on at Backstage Capital right now.
That's great to hear. Who's next?
Well, I'll jump in. I'm gonna feel like I'm going into an event of 400 something, mainly women tomorrow, talking about money, and it's been, I have to say, curating something, as I've done for, decades, there have been a lot of ups and downs, and I have not been that hopeful. I'll just say, it just seems like we're rolling back in so many rights. As someone who's had the blessing to attend Gloria Steinem's 90th birthday party a couple months ago in New York, and just as a personal friend, just looking to her, so many years in as an activist, as a leader that's securing rights so that we can even be here today. There's a lot to be upset about, but hope is a muscle. And I just ask, what's the alternative? Like, I'm going to continue to show up for myself, from our community, for my friends, for my, people that work with me, because there is no other choice. And what gives me hope from others is when people show up and say, I'm here too. Here's what I'm doing. I'm doing my part. Would you like to be a part of what we're doing? Making the world a better place according to what our standards and our values and our experiences and our identities. That's just who I think most of us are. So that's what gives me hope. And, my girlfriend's like giving some high fives every once in a while doesn't hurt either.
Daryl, you want to close us out?
Sure. I'm hopeful just because it seems like people are becoming more and more informed about these issues. They're more intelligent about them. It's harder for the wool to be pulled over our eyes. It probably has something to do with women getting more education. I think that it's hard. It's getting harder and harder to get away with stuff. Even with the Fearless Fund, people know exactly what that was about. So that gives me hope, just that, we're aware.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's a great place to end. So I want to give you, the panel, a big thank you. Thank you for your insights. Make sure that you're following and you're connecting with all of these amazing thought leaders. Thank you, audience, for your participation and your engagement. And I'll pass it back to you, Nina.
Thanks, Hadi. Thank you, Arlen, Daryl, Hadi, and Jackie for that discussion. You know, as a Gen Z woman who's relatively new to the workforce and pretty intimidated by the state of the economy today and all the concerns that you all talked about in the panel, it was really inspiring to hear your stories, your expertise, and most importantly, your encouragement. And seeing the chat.